if you ask them, what do you think about a temple, or what about this problem or something else, they will tell you, yes, of course, there are many problems, and we would like certain things to be different. But all in all, things are not that bad. We have a state, we have an army, we have a very powerful army. Israel's a very powerful country. The economy is doing well. So really, our situation is, all in all, very good. And I'm here to tell you that that is completely wrong. Our situation is not very good at all. It is, in fact, very, very dire.
Discussion that may turn out to be a bit fiery, in some circles, a bit controversial. We have two fantastic guests who are willing to step out and provide us some views from different aspects of the prism. Rabbi David Bar-Haim and Rabbi Yosef Edrei. We bring them in because they have two different views. You know, the idea, you have two Jews, three different opinions, maybe even more than that. Rabbi David Bar-Haim, head of the Shiloh Institute for the Research and Dissemination of the Torah of the land of Israel, he has written a document with the idea of forming a successful rabbinic community and preparing the way to establish all of that is needed for the nation of Israel to function toward the Messianic era. His website is machonshiloh.org. Now, we also have Rabbi Yosef Edrei, originally from Crown Heights in Brooklyn, New York, now living in the Golan Heights in Israel. He is founder of Moshiach Global News. He is working to establish the Bet Havad, or coalition of rabbis and scholars, which will deal with two objectives. Number one would be helping the nations of Israel, the nation of Israel and the B'nai Noach, or Noahides, solve disputes. A timely subject, by the way. And two, studying the topic of forming nascent Sanhedrin and providing assistance to the nation of Israel in preparation for the upcoming mitzvot, or commandments, to be instituted toward the coming of Moshiach, the Messiah. And you can visit his website at mnglobal.org. That is mnglobal.org. And right now we bring our guest on, and we're going to turn it over to you, Tamar.
All right. Before we start, I think that as the presenter, I should give my bias first so people know where I stand. And I'm just going to read it, if you don't mind, everybody. My present opinion, it could change after the show, on the matter of sitting and waiting for miracles versus taking action and moving things forward, and the build it and they will come idea. So in my plus 60 years on this planet, I have seen this idea work. Build it and they will come. For instance, my own neighborhood in Judea and Samaria, which is over the Green Line, when we were first building homes, we had overbuilt, and we were afraid, oh no, we've got 100 homes and we only have 40 families. What's going to happen? We don't have enough families to build this home. But well, it was Ariel Sharon, who was the minister of building then. He had the vision, and he built these homes and they were filled. And in fact, 5 new neighborhoods have sprung up, and we are still itching for more homes here in our community. So this is the philosophy that I have more or less embraced, of being active and bringing things forward and not waiting for things to happen. In fact, the whole idea of the state of Israel was based on that philosophy, is just we need a homeland, we're going to build it, there's a necessity for it, and we're going to do it. So with that out of the way, let me ask my first question, if I can, to Rabbi Yosef Edrei. Thank you very much for coming on the show, both of you. I'll start with you, Rabbi Edrei. It says on your website that on Sunday, April 3rd, only several weeks from today, by the way, you're planning to hold an event in Jerusalem, establishing a renewed Sanhedrin, or High Jewish Court, in preparation or in tandem with the Messianic era. You write, quote, "The Sanhedrin establishment is the international justice system. Now in Israel, we bring it back to life. We are calling all Jews to put their differences aside and take this step with us into the Geula, the redemption. This is a bold move, and one that is, I have to say it, very apt to fail, as we saw back in the early 2000s when the then nascent Sanhedrin that came to be, it was established. Unfortunately, it had little support. I was supporting it. I was thrilled about it, but not even everybody knew about it. In fact, probably the majority of the people didn't even know about it, that it existed. So how will your endeavors be different? And how do you think that you're going to succeed this time?
So first of all, thank you very much for having me, Tamar, and thank you to the team on Israel News Talk. And I've always wanted to, first of all, as a Chabadnik, from even before my bar mitzvah, I was already dealing with secular Jews, non-Jews, teaching and educating about the 7 laws of Noah. And I have been involved in this kind of stuff for many, many years. And we, as years develop.
We love your son. He's beautiful. God bless him.
I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. So over the years, I've realized, especially when I was in the Diamond District and for many years doing Miftzayim there, putting on tefillin, giving out Sheva Mitzvahs, B'nai Noach cards to everyone. We had every single language in Chinese and Arabic and in Spanish. I realized that there is a way to bridge gaps throughout different cultures and things. And we, of course, as a Chabadnik also, we deal with all different kinds of communities in the Brooklyn area, whether they're Hasidic or Litvishers. And, you know, every Chag, we're going out menorahs, Pesach. So I do see that there's a lot, in my experience, there's a lot of common ground within the Jewish community itself. We're a little bit tired from the Golos, I must say. The Holocaust and the tsaros that we go through, which are well documented, have worn us out. But nevertheless, I do see a lot of bridges being built. So I do have tikva in Am Yisrael, and I do believe that we, yes.
If you use a Hebrew word, please try to translate it into English for the listeners who don't know Hebrew.
Okay. So I do believe that we have a hope for this to be successful. We have now, as the people on my Noahide group and the Lion and the Lamb group pointed out, we have the numbers. There's millions of Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael right now. And there's a very big, strong, Orthodox, religious community, morally and ethically responsible. And I do believe that it's time. And we're talking about the global world, there's a huge thirst, like the Rambam says, for Lishma et Divrei Hashem. And I do believe that there's a lot of common ground also in the events in the world right now, which is that the Christians, the Muslims, the Jews are all fighting against, you know, different issues in the world that we all are, we all have common beliefs in those issues. So I do believe that it's time. And when it comes to if now is the time compared to, let's say, yesterday, then it's about Kiyum Hayud. It means to fulfill the prophecy, or the prophecy must be fulfilled. But there's a way to look at it in a way that we need to use our free choice, our Bechira Chofshit, the same free choice that we get for Schar Ve'onesh, to use that for the Geula, for the Sanhedrin.
Okay, I'm going to ask you more details of how you think this is going to work this time, but I want to go to Rabbi David Bar Chaim, if I can now. And I wanted to say here that you wrote a document entitled Establishment of the Community of Torah, Eretz Yisrael, the Land of Israel. And you write here, the ultimate purpose of Judaism was announced by the Creator before he transmitted the 10 Commandments to his people. And you shall be for my purpose a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. A nation wherein freedom dwells with righteousness, you write, equality with excellence, wealth with beauty, and here and now with love of the eternal. The nation of Israel is the link connecting God and mankind. Quote, I, God, have summoned you for a righteous purpose and have assigned for you my covenant with humanity, a light for the nations. So you also add here that the critical mass of Jews in the land of Israel and overseas needs to be truly desirous of such a reality. And this needs to be formed first. This is a prerequisite to establishing a Sanhedrin and appointing a king over Israel. So the question that remains is, how can we get the nation of Israel to be desiring such a reality? You write this document is a first step on that path, but please follow up.
Very well. If you ask me, how do we get the entire Jewish people to be desirous of such things, of such a program today or tomorrow, I must tell you that I do not know, because there are many, many Jews in the world and in Israel who are so far removed from such ideas and such notions that it's like speaking Chinese to them, and we know that. In the first instance, we are addressing ourselves to Torah Jews, Jews who identify with the Torah, Jews who live a Torah lifestyle, and I would add, Jews who perceive that the present state of affairs, by which I mean the current state of Israel, is not the solution. There are many Torah Jews in the world, very frum Jews in the world, very religious, very precise in their halachic practice. But they believe that all such matters to do with the Moshiach, the Messiah, the Mikdash, the temple, the Beit Din HaGadol, the great Beit Din, the great Sanhedrin of the Jewish people, all these things will occur in the future, but it's not our problem. It's not for us to make these things happen, and we cannot make them happen. We just have to wait. So essentially, according to these people, and there are many such people within the Jewish world, the miswah, the commandment, as it were, is to wait. In the meantime, to be a good Jew and keep Shabbat, the Sabbath, and keep kosher and do all the miswah, all the precepts and all the commandments and be a good person. But essentially, when it comes to these things, it's not for us. It's not our job. It's not our responsibility. That is one class of religious Jew out there. And it goes without saying that we reject that outlook and that approach completely. Because if we agreed, we wouldn't be here. We would just be doing what they're doing, which is waiting. Now, there are other Jews in the world, for example, the religious Zionist sector of the religious world, who are emotionally and ideologically very heavily invested in the state of Israel. They identify completely with the state of Israel, and they have essentially achieved a form of self-satisfaction. They're quite happy with the present reality, if the truth be told. If you ask them, what do you think about a temple, or what about this problem or something else, they will tell you, yes, of course, there are many problems, and we would like certain things to be different, but all in all, things are not that bad. We have a state, we have an army, we have a very powerful army. Israel's a very powerful country. The economy is doing well. So really, our situation is, all in all, very good. And I'm here to tell you that that is completely wrong. Our situation is not very good at all. It is in fact very, very dire. And the danger in that approach and that state of mind is that if you are so content with what you have, then essentially you do not really aspire to anything else. You may pay lip service to certain things, but in practice, you will not really give any thought to how to change anything, how to make things different or better. From my point of view, the message to such people is that you have to go beyond, you have to drop that ideology, you have to get beyond Zionism. I think such people should view themselves as graduates of religious Zionism. They've gone through that stage, they've been there, they've done that, they've seen what secular Zionism had to offer the Jewish people, and it had certain things to offer. We would not be here discussing these things if it had not been for secular Zionism. But secular Zionism has run its course. And in fact, it is now the source of almost all of our problems. And this is a realization that the national religious or Zionist religious community of Jews in the world, I believe, has to realize and accept. Now, I of course want a temple, and I of course want a Sanhedrin and a system of Jewish governance based on Torah concepts and principles. But I know that's not going to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to happen next year either, as far as I can tell. You cannot have a king, for example, without a people. A person can announce that he's a king, but if he has no people that follows him, over whom he rules, then he's not a king. The same is true of a prime minister or a president. The same is true of a Sanhedrin or anything like that. If there is no group of people who recognize a particular authority, a particular system, then that system doesn't really have any existence, does not have any meaning. The way to approach this matter, therefore, in my view, is to create, in the first instance, a community, a Torah Eretz Yisrael community, a community of religious Jews who define themselves as Jews living in the land of Israel, who have gone beyond what Zionism and even religious Zionism can offer. It goes without saying that they're not interested in that version of Judaism, which is all about waiting for other things to happen or for God to take care of everything, which is not what the Torah says. The Torah doesn't say that God builds the temple. The Torah says that we build the temple. People who recognize these things must form themselves and bind themselves formally into a community. And when you have a community, then you have the true foundation of Jewish life. With community come identity, direction, organization, and responsibility. And such a community will sow, in my view, the seeds of Torah Eretz Yisrael, the true, authentic Torah of the Jewish people in its land, in its homeland, and will give impetus to its development, allowing it to take root and be passed on to future generations. And therefore, the foundational act of this community must be the appointment of a Beth Hawa'ad. Beth Hawa'ad means essentially a rabbinical council, a place where erudite Torah scholars and other experts in certain fields will be able to discuss, debate, and delineate the community's structure and direction. Having created such a living, vibrant community within the Jewish people, its ideology and its energy and its approach to Jewish life, I believe, will, by a process of osmosis, will spread out throughout other sectors of the Jewish people. So we're talking about a long-term process. I am a realist, I'm not a dreamer.
Okay, so basically the difference that I see so far, and you can both correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going to bring you back on spotlight, Rabbi Edrei, is that Rabbi Edrei is saying, we need this, we need to move forward, and he's in the bulldozer, and he's making the path, forging the path, ignoring the jungles around him, the rocky terrain, and he's going to try to build this. And you are saying, Rabbi Bar Chaim, that before we do this, we have to first build a foundation of a community of people who want this, so we can go more with strength and establish something that would be recognized by. You already have the audience because you've built that community, and then you would have the support that goes with it. Am I right so far? Both of you? Chime in, anyone.
we both have been corresponding for the last few months. Few weeks, I'm not sure.
Last month, I think.
Last month, and we usually agree on most things. I think that this is a two-pronged strategic goal that we're trying, a campaign that we're trying to go. I think that it goes yad b'yad, it goes hand in hand. On one hand, it's important that the Jewish people not be despaired and that they should have a vision and understand their responsibilities in the process of the Geula. A typical example that we discussed is like if someone is keeping kosher, some Jews say, "Oh, I'm just going to keep praying. I'm going to keep learning the Torah. I'm going to do the regular stuff, and that's going to bring Mashiach." So the simple question is, if you're keeping kosher, how does that help you bring the Karban Pesach? It's two different mitzvahs. We're only doing Paz mitzvot, 87 mitzvot out of the 613. Our portal out of Golus, out of exile, is to understand that a lot of mitzvot, a lot of commandments depend on another commandment, which depends on another commandment. So, like me and Rabbi Bar Chaim agree, there needs to be a Bet Havad, which is the Jewish congressional body. Which, by the way, if I might fill in for the audience, that some 9 generations ago, before the Baal Shem Tov, there was Vad Arba Aratzot, which is the Council of Four Lands, which was a legal body of ultra-Orthodox religious scholars and rabbis, which were also considered a political party. They can walk in and out of kings, in Europe at the time and represent the Jewish community at the time. So that was dismantled, and it was a very big blow to the Jewish community, in Europe at the time, and represent. And after that, there was also the Crusades and other things. The Jews kind of went through hard times. I think that what we need to do is reverse engineer. I think that the real issue is that I don't think that we have many Jewish communities, and they all, if you ask them, like the passport of a Jew is, we want Mashiach. It's hard to find a Jew that says, I'm not interested in the Geula. I think that the real issue is that they don't really know the intricate details of what makes what happen and how it works. I think that the Bet Havad, establishing the numbers and the Torah scholarship and the leadership and the community, and then that creating the Sanhedrin, which in effect can crown a king, which in effect can destroy the Amalek, or clear out the Temple Mount, and then which in effect can give the order to build the Bet HaMikdash, which in effect
Holy Temple.
The Holy Temple. Yeah, so that would expand all the 613 mitzvahs for all Jews to practice. I think that the Jews need to understand how it works. Once they understand how it works and how it starts with Ahavat Yisrael, which is the reason that the second temple was destroyed. We need to bring back Ahavat Chinam instead of Sinat Chinam. We need to stand each other. We need to work with each other. We need to respect each other. All we need to do is that. And I think that the last 2 years have shaken us up to the realities of what exile is all about. And I hope that the Jewish people are tired enough of exile to say, you know what, maybe our differences and our minhagim this way and that way are not worth hating other Jews for, or worth holding back Mashiach, pretty much. Maybe we can put those things aside for the sake of the Geula, for the sake of the Beis Havad in Sanhedrin, Melech, like we said, the whole chain of events, which will bring us into the Geula. Now, as far as communities, of course, I believe that all of Am Yisrael should become part of this community. And I know that not every person in Am Yisrael is a leader. Maybe 1 in 1,000 is a leader and is ready to take responsibility. I've met many people that they say, whatever my rabbi says, that's what I do. And they're not ready to even take responsibility. Many of them are also Baalei Tshuva. They don't know enough. So they just rely on their rabbi to tell them what to do or what's right or what's wrong. They're not well versed enough. But in any case, I think that the leadership, at least in all communities, should begin to train themselves to understand what coexisting is and what working together is. At the end of the day, it's all about morally and ethically guiding the world. The Bnei Noach and the Jewish people, our mission is to be a light unto the nations. I think if we fulfill that role, we'll be surprised at how many people throughout the world need our support, want our support. This is also the first time that non-Jews will be able to have direct access to Dayanim, to Rabbanim, if they need to work out an issue. If a Jew has an issue with a non-Jew overseas, it doesn't matter where in the world, they'll be able to solve that issue with Rabbanim. So Bnei Noach will be able to have representation from Jewish rabbinical authorities, and like my family's from Morocco, and we know that the king of Morocco gave the rabbis in Morocco Jewish police that would enforce whatever the rabbi said, and that was built by reputation and by showing the king that the rabbis were taking, Yirei Shamayim, God-fearing Jews, which take responsibility for what they say and are doing things for the right purposes. And I do believe that the nations of the world, even Bilam, the first prophet of the Geula, was non-Jewish. The non-Jews are ready for the Geula, in my opinion, for the redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do believe that the Jewish people need to let us know if they're ready for the redemption as well. So Rabbi Bar Chaim is saying that the community is important. I'm saying that we need to move forward. Yeah.
Rabbi David Bar Chaim, do you want to answer him or say something else?
As we stated at the very beginning, the purpose of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, is to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. This is stated in the book of Exodus, chapter 19. And in Isaiah chapter 42, we are told that God says to the Jewish people, I've chosen you for a particular righteous purpose, to be a light for the nations. That is the job description of the Jewish people, and has always been. This is not new. And of course, we wish to live up to that divinely inspired and divinely delineated destiny. The question is, how do we go about doing it? And who is responsible for doing that? I want to tell you, all of you, a story, a true story. When I was studying in the yeshiva, where I studied for 10 years, Yeshivat Merkaz Harav, one day I was sitting in my room and learning there in my room, and a friend of mine walked into the room, and he said, I have a question for you. I said, sure. He said, here in this yeshiva, we are told that the advent of the Zionist movement and all the historical upheavals and developments that have taken place in the Jewish world over the past century and a half were divinely directed so that the Jewish people returned to their land and would re-establish their national sovereignty. Okay, that's correct, I said. And it's a fact that the Zionist movement was successful in establishing a state in a very small part, it should be added, in a very small part of the land of Israel. But he asked me, no one really ever explains how we are going to get from the present reality, that is to say Israel as it is today, which is entirely disinterested, in fact, opposed to all the things that we're discussing. How is the present state of Israel going to evolve into the ideal state of Israel, into the ideal Jewish state? How is that going to take place? It was that question all those years ago that got me thinking. And the simple answer to that question is that the religious Zionist world, which tells itself this story, hasn't got the first idea, hasn't got a clue as to how the present state of Israel, which was the product of the Zionist movement, which in its first Congress passed a resolution in which it stated in Hebrew, and I will translate, Ein latzionut davar im hadat, Zionism has nothing to do with religion or the Torah, in other words, with Judaism. that state of Israel established by that kind of movement that resolved and voted on such a resolution, that kind of state is not interested in, and in fact is opposed to all these ideas that we're discussing. So how does this state how does it evolve into something else? The answer is that it cannot, and it will not by itself. It will only happen if a critical mass of Jews organize themselves and begin to think and live and educate themselves and their children, their grandchildren, their friends, their communities about a different vision, a different purpose, and a different direction for the Jewish people. The state of Israel as it is today is not a final and fixed reality. It is a temporary reality. It is something that we have to go beyond. We have to graduate from this current state of affairs, which is a very, very poor and even, how should I put it, very, very unsatisfactory invention. It was the best the Zionist movement could come up with, yes, but that's not saying very much. The Zionist movement was essentially a non-Judaism, non-Torah Jewish movement. It was based on all kinds of foreign conceptions and assumptions and
Isms
and aims and what have you. Essentially, the idea was to set up some kind of place where Jews could live in peace and be left alone. That's about the only general and undisputed definition of Zionism that you could actually come up with, because within the Zionist movement you had socialist Zionists who wanted a socialist kind of state, or even communists, and you had other kinds of people, revisionists. Everyone had their own idea of what kind of state it should be. All they really agreed upon was that, and even that wasn't actually agreed upon, that the Jews belong in Eretz Yisrael, or some small part thereof, and they should be allowed to live here and be in peace. That was about it. Now, we all know that all of these premises are incorrect. It's not true that we will be left alone if we live in our land. We all know that has not been the case, and that's not about to change. We all know that this state of Israel as it is today is disinterested and, in fact, diametrically opposed to the true aims of the Jewish people as defined by the Torah, as manifested in Jewish history. So we cannot adopt, as religious Zionists, for example, we cannot adopt the position of the non-Zionist, ultra-Orthodox world who just wait for the Geulah, for the redemption to happen somehow miraculously by itself, autonomously, without human agency. We cannot adopt that position with regards to the Zionist state of Israel and say, well, that's somehow just going to miraculously evolve into the ideal state. That's not going to happen. It will only happen when we make it happen, if we organize and work towards that goal. And that is the aim of the foundational community of Torah Eretz Yisrael. We are not willing to settle for what we have, because what we have is simply not good enough.
Okay, and so let me go back to Rabbi Edrei for a moment, and I want to understand, and I think that our listeners do as well. You are planning already to have an event in Jerusalem on the 3rd of April. I believe it's at the King David Hotel, which is a very nice and established hotel, historic. Basically announcing the establishment of the Sanhedrin, correct me if I'm wrong, and you're saying we have to move ahead and go ahead. What are the reasons that you believe that this time it's going to work? This time people are going to take it seriously. This time people are going to know about it. This time it's going to be successful. Please.
Okay, so first of all, for clarification, the event in the Malon David in Jerusalem, is going to be as close as we can get technically and halachically to a Sanhedrin, which unfortunately at this point, practically speaking, be a educational event. You see the topics that we're going to be speaking about over there are all these intricate topics, and it is a step forward. We are inviting leadership in the Jewish community to attend, and larger organizations that have been working very hard towards the Geula, each one in his own domain. Is it going to be the establishment of the Sanhedrin? I don't believe so, as Rabbi Baruch Chaim explained earlier. However, it will be the closest we can get, and of course, like Rabbi Baruch Chaim mentioned earlier, en melech belo am. There's no way that a king can exist without a nation. So it really depends on the interest of Am Yisrael. It truly does. And I jokingly say sometimes that the Rebbe of Chabad could have moved much faster and much more forward into a role that would help Am Yisrael as a melech or whatever, but due to lack of interest, we were not zoch al pi halacha to be able to see it all go down. But at the same time, I will say that we are now like the door of Yehoshua,
the generation of Joshua.
yes, which is after Moshe, which is after Moses, and we know that the Bible speaks a lot about the Jewish people going with Moses and going all the way almost to Israel, and Moses doesn't manage to go into Israel. And then when Yehoshua conquers Israel, it's very short, it's very quick, because the generation of Yehoshua grew up and they knew who Moshe was, and they knew what needed to be done, and they went in and they did quick work, because all the Yesodot were already placed. And I think that the Rebbe, all Jews know that the Rebbe really made a big shturim, a big hassle about
Awareness,
uplifting the Jewish, awareness and uplifting the Jewish spirit when it comes to Moshiach. And the Rebbe brought us very far compared to the horrors of the Holocaust, to bring up the spirit of the Jewish nation. I think that right now we need to clean up, we need to continue and fulfill everything that 2,000 years of our forefathers, have brought us to. The Rebbe mentioned that we're the 7th generation from the Admor HaZaken. We're special. We have everything, and not because we're special, but because we come after so many people that have so many generations of self-sacrifice, all to come to this moment. So I do believe that this event is going to be as close as we can get, and as much as we can accomplish, then that's what it will be. And we will definitely speak to the halachic requirements of as far as possible, which is really the first step in the Geula process, of how far we can go and what we need. There's like Rabbi Baruch Chaim and myself have discussed the halachic implications of how to reignite smicha to begin the process. I do know that. Oh, and to answer your question of what's different between this time and the earlier attempt from 15 years ago or so, is because we're going to first of all, those years gave enough experience for those who were involved to see who were serious, who was not, and so on. Who are the team players? Who are the people that had temat vekim ba'Hashem Elokechem, and who are the ones who came for a personal interest or didn't understand the magnitude of what's going on? So I think there was a lot of birur, a lot of cleansing, a lot of filterization. A lot of sifting. And now we have the experience of the earlier attempt, and hopefully we'll be successful from now on.
So you feel that we're ready? Here's the next generation that we're seeing right here, such a shame upon him. You feel that we're ready, that we have to go forward and not wait. And can I just ask also, do you have any big names? Do you have any big rabbanim, big rabbis that have a following? So if just one rabbi says yes, he's already got 100,000 people or 30,000 people or whatever under him that are going to be with you? Or is this all like just the amcha, just the little yid, the Jew here and Jew here and Jew here?
Well, we do have connections with a lot of Rabbanim that are very prominent, as Rabbi Bar Chaim and I discussed, it's that the Sanhedrin topic is something that many Rabbanim don't want to be associated with openly. That's why the Beis Havad will kind of give more of a general term and be more welcoming to these rabbis. So hopefully, we will have these rabbis finally feel comfortable in joining. It's a work in progress, and there are some dayanim that are very prominent, and we every day we have people sending me phone numbers. They say, call this guy, call that guy, call this guy, politicians, rabbis, scholars, bring everyone in, bring everyone, as many people as. So we're working around the clock to make that a reality. There's only so fast that we can work as of now, but we're doing our best with the capabilities that we have.
Rabbi Bar Chaim, weigh in, please.
I would like to quote from what Rambam Maimonides writes towards the end of his code of Jewish law, called in Hebrew the Mishneh Torah. Rambam writes that, describing the Messianic process, Rambam does not describe a process which is miraculous or supernatural in any way. This is what many people imagine. Many people imagine that the Messiah is some kind of miracle worker who rides into Yerushalayim, into Jerusalem one day in a white donkey and announces, "Here I am." And at that moment, the world somehow transforms itself into a different place. And we're not talking about some historical and natural development. Excuse me. But that is not the way Maimonides explains it at all. And our understanding, our approach is entirely rooted in Maimonides' approach. Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimonides writes that when you have a Jewish nation, a sufficient number, a critical mass of Jews living in the land of Israel, who then appoint over themselves a Jewish leader. The Rambam refers to this leader as a king, as a melech. And this king, this leader, is a loyal Jew in the sense that he lives according to the Torah. He himself, in his personal life, he lives according to the Torah. And he also makes it his business to see that the Jewish people follow and in the path of the Torah. Such a person, if he succeeds in overcoming the Jewish people's enemies, if he succeeds in establishing the supremacy of the Torah within the Jewish nation's society, within that sovereign Jewish entity which he rules over, then we can begin to assume that such a person is the Messiah that the prophets speak about at length. It should also be noted that in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, the word Moshiach in this context does not appear. The word Messiah does not appear at all. What it states in the Torah is that if you will act sinfully and you will not follow the path that Hashem has laid out for you, Hashem will send you into exile. But at some point, Hashem will bring you back. It says in the Torah, "V'shav Adonai Elohecha et shavutecha." Hashem will return all of your captives, all of your exiles from wherever they may be, and bring them back to their homeland, the land of their fathers. That Jewish leader, if he succeeds initially, we can begin to assume that this is the person that the Torah and the prophets spoke of, and that this is perhaps the beginning of the Messianic era. If in his time, the time of this leader, he goes on to succeed in all in all his endeavors, including rebuilding the Mikdash, the temple, and certain other things the Rambam Maimonides mentions, then we know, then we can be quite certain that this is the Messiah about which the Torah and the prophets spoke. In other words, Maimonides describes an historical process whereby, due to certain developments, as they play out, you can begin to assume, perhaps, that this is the beginning of the Messianic period, because the Messianic period, as Maimonides himself explains, is simply the return of the Jewish people to their homeland and the establishment of a sovereign Jewish nation living according to the dictates, the precepts of the Torah, which of course then goes on to be a light to the nations, as we discussed. This is the Messianic concept according to Torah Judaism. This is how Maimonides describes this set chain of events, at the end of which, only at the end of which, will you be able to look back retroactively and know that this was apparently the historical series of events that brought to fruition that Messianic period. It is not the reverse. In other words, at first there is a figurehead, there is a person whom everyone somehow knows is the Moshiach, who's the Messiah, before he has done anything, before anything has happened, and then he goes on to achieve certain other things. It's not so. The Jewish people first have to establish their own system of governance based on the Torah and establish for themselves a head of state. And that person is the king or the president, the Nasi. In the book of Ezekiel, for example, in the book of Yehezkel, the Mashiach is not referred to by the term Melech, king. He's referred to by the term Nasi, which can also be translated as president or something like that. We are talking about non-supernatural. We are talking about natural, historical, evolutionary processes put into motion by Jews who are acting in order to fulfill Hashem's
will
and for the Jewish people as delineated in the Torah. That is what the Messianic period is all about. It is not about coming up with someone who is a great miracle worker who revives the dead or something like that. That is not the Jewish concept of Mashiach. That is something that we all must be clear about.
Rabbi Bar Chaim, I want to say here that I think that Rabbi Edry is doing just that. He's not waiting for miracles. He's forging forward. And I'm asking, because I don't know the answer, but wouldn't it be better to already take the steps to put in a type of shadow government? Since we see that the state of Israel, the corruption that we see in the Knesset today, and people are losing faith in the government, they're losing faith in the army that we love so much, they're losing faith in the entire establishment that they thought had their best interests at heart, and they're seeing the state bubbling up its corruption, and they're ready maybe for something new. And wouldn't it be better just to forge forward, and those who will come late will come late, but we're already establishing a foundation, even if it might fail. I mean, when I started Israel News Talk Radio, I didn't know if we were going to last more than 2 months. That's all the funds that we had. But you just forge forward because there's a need, there's a necessity, and you do everything you can do within your power, and you hope that God will bless you and bring it to fruition if that's his will. And you don't worry about if it's going to succeed or not going to succeed. Is Israel it's declaring itself a state? I mean, the Arabs are going to come in any second and wipe us out. It's ridiculous to declare a state. We're not ready for it. We don't have the funding and the et cetera. So I'd like to ask you that. And while Rabbi Bar Chaim is answering that question, if the audience has any questions for either Rabbi Edry or Rabbi Bar Chaim, you can type it in the chat room, and Rod will present those to our guests when they finish. Please. It's
not a question of coming early or arriving late. It's about creating certain realities on the ground within the Jewish people, which by necessity take time to take root, to be recognized. How do you achieve recognition? By announcing we're the Sanhedrin, or I'm the king, or I'm the new leader of the Jewish people? No, no one takes that seriously, and quite rightly so. If, on the other hand, you begin by forming the community of Jews in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel, who believe in these kinds of ideas, even if at first it's only a community of a few tens or hundreds or thousands of Jews, which is a small minority of the Jewish people, but so what? The Zionist movement was a small minority of the Jewish people. How many Jews at the beginning of the Zionist movement, the late 19th century, how many Jews in the world were dedicated Zionists? A tiny fraction of the Jewish people. So how did they succeed? Because there was no one else doing anything else. And over time, there was no concerted, organized opposition that had a different plan, a different suggestion. And over time, they began to create facts on the ground. They set up a kibbutz here and a kibbutz there, Homa Migdal. You know, they would, at night, they would go off and grab a piece of land and build a fence around it and a water tower, and somehow just create facts on the ground. And they began to organize themselves on a very local and simple level at first. And in that way, in a natural sociological historical process, they became the dominant force within Jewish society in what was then called Palestine, a foreign name, which of course is based on nothing at all. It was the invention of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. Mm-hmm. He wished to steal the land of Judah from the Jewish people, the Yehuda from the Yehudim. And the way to do that, in his eyes, was to change the name. The name is all important. Words are all important. Yes. If you call something Palestine, well, then it's not Yehuda. If you speak about Palestinians, which don't exist, there's no such people, never have been, and the Palestinians themselves have been saying this for the last 100 years, if you just read what they've been saying. But if you talk about Palestinians, well, if they're Palestinians, then there has to be a Palestine somewhere. So where is it? It's not in Texas, so where is it exactly? So we have to use the right terminology. We have to think in Torah terms. You create facts on the ground, you create a community, a network of communities, and eventually that will over time become a very powerful, significant force within the Jewish people. That's not something that happens overnight. Those who think that there is a quick fix for the Jewish people's problems are deluding themselves and will fail. And worse than failure, they will convince many Jews that there is no hope for bringing about the Jewish people's redemption and the tikkun olam, the redemption of the world. There is no way for the Jewish people to make that happen, because we've tried and tried and it never happens. It always fails, and therefore there's no point trying. In other words, by repeated failure, by doing things in the wrong way, by acting irrationally and in a premature manner, by placing the cart before the horse, we will simply cause people to become even more convinced that all these ideas are pie in the sky. We have to work in a realistic, down-to-earth manner, and we have to be patient. There are no quick fixes for the Jewish people or for the world.
Okay, Rabbi Ed, do you want to briefly reply, and then Rod, you'll come on with any questions if anyone has anything from the audience, okay?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Rabbi Chaim said. First, that ironically enough, we are called Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael, and the Medinat Yisrael. And back in the day, there was Malchut Yehuda and Malchut Yisrael. And at a certain point, Malchut Yisrael was doing Avodah Zarah and not letting people go to Yerushalayim. And Malchut Yehuda was doing everything in their power to preserve the traditions and the heritage of Am Yisrael, and go in the Torah Moshe, the ways of Moses. So that's just a side point. And again, I think that communities is very important. Everything, Dr. Trappler, MD, which is on our Rabbi Dr. Trappler, MD, which is on our board of the Emin Global organization, also the founder of Ami My Nation. He told me that we were learning Hasidut, Kabbalah, Hasidic philosophy, and he told me that everything already exists. The Yud K Vav K, God's names, the letters of God's names are all there, but they need to be plugged in. They need to be energized. They need to work together. They only have power when they're working together. And I think that it's a very good example. It's a very good parable for what's happening now. I think that we have everything. We have the Geula. I mean, we have everything we need for the Geula, and we just need to move forward. Another point I want to say is that it's okay if we don't get it 100% right the first try. As long as we have a plan and as long as we're patient and diligent, I think we'll be matzliach. Like it's a yagato matzatamin. If you try, you'll be successful. And I think that just like we had Shaul, which was a king before David, and his name literally means borrowed. So he was not even from the tribe of David. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. However, he was a God-fearing Jew. He was a tzaddik in his time. So he was successful, and then King David comes in after him, and King David did not merit to build a temple, but he did merit to get to make enough of a situation in Eretz Yisrael by eradicating the enemies and gathering silver and other precious items for the building of the temple, so that when King Solomon arrives on the scene, he's able to fulfill the commandment of building the temple. So I do believe that there is a hadaraga, there's a step-by-step. As long as we're moving, we don't need to move at lightning speed, but we need to move, and we need to take the responsibility. And I also want to point out that Judaism is based on Bechira Chavshis. We have the Hineni Noisan Lechem, I give you today the good and the bad, blessing and the curse, and so on. Ubacharta b'chaim, and you should choose life. So Judaism only gives reward because we have choice. And if we're going to assume that we have choice, then that means that Hashem expects us, God expects us to use said choice to fulfill his commandments. So just like in a simple way, we pay our bills, we pay our electric bill, our rent or whatever, or mortgage, and we take that very seriously, and we understand that it's in this world. I think that we need to understand that spirituality has a place in this world as well. We need to connect the heavens and the earth together.
Okay, let me bring everybody back onto the spotlight here. Sorry, one of my lights went out. Or maybe Rod, you can help me and you can come on with a question.
Yeah, while you're adjusting the camera, etc. Just a couple of comments here. It says Frank suggested or asked this question: What part of this has to do with the 10 tribes as prophesied play in the Moshiach is coming? How does all this and the 10 tribes coming and the temple, how does that all dovetail together right now? Or is that too big of a subject to cover right now?
If the question is being addressed to me, then I would say that this is a red herring to a large extent. Nobody knows for a fact if the 10 tribes are going to reappear somehow or not. How do I know that nobody knows? Because it is entirely unclear in the prophets themselves, in the Mishnah, in the oral tradition, in tractate Sanhedrin. This is discussed, and there are 2 opinions on the matter. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer, 2 of the great sages, do not agree on this question. We do not really know what will be in terms of this particular aspect of the Messianic period, if various groups of people reappear and somehow rejoin the Jewish people or not. This is unclear. entirely unclear. And this is not something that we should or can even focus on, because there's nothing practical and productive that we can do about this. I will mention that historically, there is reason, even based on certain statements in the Tanakh, in the Bible, there is good reason to believe that when the northern kingdom of Israel was destroyed in the 8th century, according to the Christian calendar, BCE, many refugees from the northern tribes fled south to the kingdom of Judah and were assimilated within the two tribes of Yehuda and Benjamin, Judah and Benjamin. And based on that, and this is mentioned by some of the medieval commentators, we have representatives of all the tribes of Israel within the present body of the Jewish people as they exist today. More than that, I don't think we can say or we should concern ourselves with.
Okay. Rod,
go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Go
Tamar.
ahead.
I would say, Rabbi Edrei, are you wanting to make a comment on that before we go on?
Well, no. This is a topic that I discussed with Rabbi Bar Chaim, and he also mentioned that. There's another point I just want to bring up, that the din is what we're involved in, and the din is what is a tangible asset. It's not, al shloshat dvarim, on 3 things the world stands: on the truth, on the din, which is judgment, on the truth, al ha'emet, and al shalom, which is the peace, which is also gemilut chasadim. So we are dealing with, if we're talking about the Beis Havad, if we're talking about Dayanim and Rabbanim, if we're talking about the correct and proper way to go forward, we're talking about the din. And this is a very important thing to remember, because there, again, once we're talking about prophecies and nebuah and these kind of things, the waters get murky very quickly. So, like we say, the Rambam, is the first one to take the Taryag mitzvot and catalog them. There's Taryag mitzvot, let's find them all, and we'll give you the sources and everything. And while the Rosh and the Alphas was working on helping Jews in exile, the Rambam, which it was busy making the path all the way to the Geula. So I think that if we go in the path of din, and we know what is the law is what's binding in Judaism, and the prophecies take a secondary place. It's almost like the emotion. So that goes with the tribes and everything. So all these things, we have a lot of things that are interesting, and they can encourage us to move forward. But when it comes to what we should do, we have to try and stick to the law as much as possible.
Right. It is a complicated endeavor for sure. Eliyahu said, or asked the question, will the Beit Havad petition the Israeli government if the time is right to move with the move of Hashem, like a political party, or uniting the different parties together? What's your opinion on how that would happen?
I do not intend to petition any government.
Okay.
I envisage, in the fullness of time, that the present system and the present regime in this country will deteriorate and collapse. And when this will happen, I cannot tell you. I can tell you that there is increasing dissatisfaction, dismay, and
disillusionment.
Disillusionment, exactly.
Yeah.
With the current state of affairs. I don't know if those listening are familiar with the current events here in Israel, but just over the last week or so, the blatantly illegal activities of the Attorney General's office and the Israeli police force, namely that they employed highly sophisticated but illegal spyware to spy on various people in the country.
Pegasus, yes.
The Pegasus program, software developed by a country, I think, called NSO. More and more people are beginning to appreciate the fact that the current system, the regime, not just this particular government, which is, of course, an unspeakably abhorrent
Abomination.
in political and spiritual and Jewish terms. It's a government which consists of a minority of Jewish parties who join forces with the political representatives of the Jewish people's sworn enemies here in the country, various Arab parties who are dedicated to destruction of this. Of
They're
Israel.
part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
We have the Muslim Brotherhood in our government, not just in the Knesset, but in the government.
Exactly, precisely. We have Mahmoud Abbas's Ra'am party, which is officially affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is officially dedicated to the destruction and removal of the state of Israel from the map. What more do you need to say?
Rabbi, we need to wrap it up because our hour is over. Right. Is there any last sentence that you want to say, both of you? Just a sentence?
I would say as follows. The Jewish people are eternal. Hashem and his Torah are eternal. We, at this point in our history, find ourselves in a certain place, but this is not the end of the story. We have to move forward from where we are today to fully implement Hashem's will and plan for the world and for the Jewish world, for the Jewish people, and for the world in its entirety. That is our purpose. And the current system is not about achieving that purpose. And therefore, it has to be viewed as something temporary, something that will eventually be replaced by something much greater. That something much greater has to be built and created from the ground up in a systematic, rational, intelligent, well thought out manner.
Okay, Rabbi Edry.
Yes, I'd like to say that though I do believe that, as Rabbi Bar Chaim said, and I do agree with him, that Zionism has run its course, and now it's time to move forward into the Geula, into the redemption. I do believe that there are some, people within the government and within the political and established systems, which do have some good intentions, or they got involved for the right reasons. Maybe later it became clear that they have no teeth, they have no way to work on those right reasons. They have no way to impact what's happening there. They're minority, they're too small, but in any case, I do believe that whatever is good in the current Zionist government is going to eventually join forces with the people that really care about Eretz Israel, which are the people that understand what the land of Israel is, what the Torah, the Bible is of Israel, and the nation of Israel, and everything, the God of Israel, everything in one, and understand that this is the last point that I would want to finish with, is that the Jewish people are one of the only, or probably the only great religion, not to mention that we're the older brother to Islam and Christianity, but we're one of the only faiths that have a positive end times narrative. In other words, we have a way, we have a vision to show the world to go into a good place. So while the whole world is dealing with, doom and gloom and anxiety and fear, we should be focused on only having fear of Hashem, fear of heaven, fear of God, and love of Hashem, love of heaven, love of God, and automatically we will be focused enough to look forward, and everything we see happening is divine providence, Hashgacha Pratis. Hashem runs the world, and the last prophet of one of the words of the Yalkut Shimoni says, humble ones, everything I'm doing only for you. Don't be worried. Everything you see, all the turmoil, the birth pains that you see in the world, I'm doing it all for you. Don't worry. It's the times of your redemption has arrived. So we need to fall into that narrative. We need to see the controlled chaos that Hashem is creating in the world and take it as another chance for us to straighten out, to do teshuvah in our personal exile, to release ourselves from our personal exile, and to join the general redemption of Am Yisrael and the world.
So I'll sum this all up by saying that it seems to me that the will is there for all of us here to see the future of Israel go building towards a Beit HaMikdash, a Sanhedrin, a King of Israel, the Messianic era. It's just that the paths are different. Everyone has their own idea of the most successful way to get there. And as we started out with the show, two Jews, different opinions. And I want to thank you both, Rabbi David Bar Chaim, for coming on the show, and Rabbi Yosef Edrei. You can follow them and be in touch with them through their websites. If you want to be in touch with Rabbi David Bar Chaim, you can do so through mahonshilo.org. And with Rabbi Edrei, it is www.M like in mother, N like in November, global.org, MashiachNewsGlobal.org, mnglobal.org, and the mahonshilo.org. I want to thank Rod Bryant for helping me producing this show, and thank all of the audience members for their questions and for coming here. And thank you everybody for being with us here at Solomon's Sword Podcast.
Thank you. All the best. Shalom, shalom.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you, Rod. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
May Hashem bless you.
Shalom, everybody.